Well, we are in week 2 of a series called Serve, where we're spending 4 weeks having a look at serving, what it means to serve, and about the fact that serving is all about this. Whenever we put our time, talent, and treasure and use those to lift other people up, that is what serving is all about. And when we do that, not only are we changed, like we experience this, right? When we help other people, it changes us, but our world changes as well. And if you believe in Jesus, it also means we get to be part of Jesus' bringing of good news to people everywhere when we get up and we serve the people around us. So we're spending a bit of time to look at this idea of serving, what it means and how we can apply it to our lives. So to get you up to speed in case you missed last week, don't worry, it's not too much that you missed. We basically did 2 things last week. We defined what serving is, and we had a look at the fact that when it comes to following Jesus, serving is a part of who Jesus is. So serving is, in terms of defining what it means, is any time that we use our time, talents, and treasures to put the person before me. When you say no to you and you say yes to them, you are doing them an act of service. You are loving them. And then serving being part of Jesus' life, we looked at Mark's account last week, and we saw that serving isn't something that Jesus just did. It was actually part of who he was. And he asks every person who follows him to imitate him as we serve our world and serve one another. And today we're going to have a look at the idea that God designed all humanity from day zero to be people who serve other people. So to help ground us in this idea, we're going to travel back in time and go through a journey into a text called Genesis. It's the first document of the Bible, and it starts off the whole collection of the Old Testament. Now, just quickly, in case Old Testament, New Testament, if you're not familiar with what those words mean, Testament is a Latin translation of a Greek word. Everyone following? Latin translation of a Greek word, which basically just means covenant or agreement. So the Old Testament is basically the old agreement between God and humanity, and that's we have Genesis through to Malachi. And then the New Testament, or the New Covenant, New Agreement, remember, it's a Latin translation of a Greek word, and that's the New Agreement with Jesus involved. So if you've ever got your first Bible and you went into the Bible and you thought, all right, everyone keeps talking about Jesus, I'm going to start at the beginning because that's where you start all books, right? And you're like, man, this Jesus character has taken some time to rock up. Yeah, because the first part is, he's not there yet. He comes in the second part. But anyway, so we're going to go back and we're going to have a look at Genesis and the story there. And just to give you an outline of the whole Bible, because in case this is your only week in church, I thought I'll give you just an overview from Genesis through to Revelation. This is like the whole Bible in 10 seconds. Are you ready? God creates, creation breaks, people wander, God wonders, the king arrives, then he dies, as we talked about this morning. But then the king is alive, and everything changes. Now, to be fair, the book has over 720,000 words, okay? So, simplistic, but a broad overview of where we're going. So, it's that first part we're going to look at today. God creates. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to have a look at some interesting words that reveal about how you and I, from day dot, from the beginning of the Bible, from the beginning of all the time, we have been made to serve. Now, before we jump into Genesis, a couple of things I want to note. Firstly, I just want to say, I do speak from the Old Testament occasionally. Some of you notice a lot of the time when I'm up here on a Sunday, I'm spruiking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the New Testament. But I just want to say up front, because I have had people go, well, where does the Old Testament fit into everything? The Old Testament is a divinely inspired writing of God's activity in our world. It's so important to read, to be encouraged by, to be inspired by the narratives, the poetry, the history, and all the other writings that we get from Genesis through to Malachi. There's so much there for us. It's just on a Sunday morning, I've got like 30 slots, of which from even our most devoted people, you're going to see 25 of them perhaps. So I just stay mostly around King Jesus. So I just want to say up front, look at that, the Old Testament for a couple of you. Yeah. All right. Secondly, when it comes to Genesis and the creation narrative, I recognize that within the Christian circles, there is a diverse viewpoint as to what Genesis means and how seriously we take it in terms of science, in terms of what it actually means. So I just wanted to say up front, if you're part of that crowd who want to know where does Genesis fit, this is just to sort of just bring us all on the same page. If you believe that Genesis is 100% literal, great. If you believe that it is just poetry, great. If you believe without Genesis being true, the whole Bible falls over, great. If you believe that Genesis doesn't have to be entirely true for the Bible to be upheld, great. There are so many different viewpoints within the Christian faith as to what do we do with Genesis. And that is a series for another time. So I'm not even going to touch that this morning. All I'm going to say is this. Genesis gives us Creator God creating us. And how that came to be and what that looks like and how seriously we take different parts of the Bible, those are discussions for another time. Whatever you believe, whatever strongly held convictions you have, all I want to say is that there is wisdom for us that we can get from the author of Genesis. So let's dive into it. So in the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, you've probably heard these words before. In the beginning, long time ago. How does Star Wars beginning? Like, I imagine when Genesis, like, in the beginning, God created the heavens. I'm imagining the Star Wars writing on the tilt. That's what I'm picturing. So in the beginning, God creates. So before anything exists, Genesis tells us God was there. A creator was ready to give breath to creation, ready to create the heavens and the earth, ready to create light. And when the light came out, what's the opposite of light? There was darkness. And then he separated those two things. Then he was ready to create the sky, the land, the sea, and every creature that would fill the sky, the land, the sea. And after all of this creating that God does, he stands back and he makes you and he makes me and he puts us into the story of creation. If you've got your Bibles, we're going to be in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, but it's going to be on the screen behind me. And this is what it says. God said this, "Let us make mankind in our image and in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock and the wild animals, over every creature that moves along the ground." So, you know what I love there? God created us. And the first thing he did was give us a job. All right, first thing he did, he said, all right, I've got a mission for you. You are going to rule over. And this is a lot where this morning sits. You and I have been created from the beginning with a job. And this idea of rule over is not to dominate. It's not to have creation submit to us. The idea of ruling over is actually to work with God in ensuring the thriving and the abundance of life here on this earth. Rule over means care for, ensure it's thriving, ensure there's ongoing abundance. The text goes on. So God created mankind in his own image. The image of God, he created them male and he created them female. Now, some of you would like me to highlight the male-female thing some more. Some of you probably want to change that. Some of you don't care. But this morning, the fact is God created us. And isn't that good? It goes on. God blesses them and says, "Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." Again, not in a dominating way, not in a subdue to get for yourself, because we see through the rest of the biblical story, and especially through Jesus, being over doesn't mean getting your way for your sake. So when he's talking about subduing here, filling the earth, subduing it is ensuring its ongoing prosperity and abundance. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So here we are. We've just been created. He's already given us a job. Then he gives us two things to do, and he reinforces the job thing. So he gave us two things to do as people. First thing he says is have lots of kids, because God's saying, look, I made all this stuff. Now go and fill it up with people. All right. And then again reinforces from verse 26, and make sure you rule over, but this is important, in partnership with him. We get to do it in partnership with him. We get to do it with God. Because remember, at this point, this is what we call pre-fall. So at this point in the story, creation is as it was intended. Then you go forward 2 chapters to Genesis chapter 3. That's when you get the story about the snake and the woman and the apple, or wasn't an apple, whatever's going on there. And then sin enters the world, and everything God had made beautiful, like, putting together a 10,000 jigsaw piece puzzle, and you put it politely on the table and you step back and go, it's perfect. It's in working order. And then a ball comes in, flies and smashes it everywhere. That's sort of like what sin did. It took this perfectly good working thing and came in and broke it. But this is pre that. So before that has happened, he says, in partnership with me, as I walk with you, as I'm with you, you are going to go and do all of these things. You're going to be fruitful, multiply. You're going to go and rule over creation. Then God says this, which is a tough verse for me personally. Then he says, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed. They will be yours for food. Some of you see where this is going, right? those who are like hardcore vegetarians and mild vegans, because you just got to cross into vegan, you're passionate. This is your verse, right? This is like creation 101. Like, we should be vegetarian. We should not be eating meat. And some of us are like, but wings, steaks, just fish, something. But at this point, pre-fall, there's no eating meat. It's just eating the plants. It's just a pure vegan diet cracking on. All right. And then he goes on and says, all the beasts of the earth, the birds in the sky, everything that moves on the ground, everything I give every green plant for food. So there's food there. Everything gets to eat plants. Then God saw everything he'd made and said, this is very, very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. And then God sits back, and you can read it on your own, goes and then has a day of rest. He sees everything he created. He'd worked hard for 6 days, and he goes, you know what, we're going to take time to stop and to enjoy the creation. Now, a quick side quest. So this isn't the point of this morning's message, but I just wanted to highlight this. God rested. When did he rest? On the what day? Seventh day. Yeah, we get that. Now, the narrative in church that we get sometimes, and in the world in general, is this. Work hard and then you can rest. God did it. He worked hard for 6 days and then he took some time off. It's almost like it seems to be the biblical mandate for work. Work hard, rest later. Work hard, play hard, all that sort of stuff. But if we hit pause for just a second, when did Adam and Eve first rest? Which day? For them, it was basically day 1 or day 2, depending if you're counting day 0 to day 1 or day 1 to day 2. So Adam and Eve, their experience of creation is very different to God. God worked for 6 days and then rested. But what Adam and Eve experience is that they are created, and their first full day is with God in rest. So I just want to put out there, maybe we have it a little bit backwards. For some of us, we think if we earn ourselves some rest time, it's because we worked hard enough. And I actually think if we look at the story of Adam and Eve and what they experienced, it actually flips the script. It's not that we work our way to rest. That's a recipe for burnout. We actually rest our way into work. And when you can swap those around, you'll have a much healthier work-life balance. That's a side quest. Back to the main mission. Just wanted to point that out. I think it's important. All right. So main program, serving. So the opening words of God at the beginning of his big book is that he creates you and I, and gives us clarity that we have been made from the beginning to work with him in serving creation, in looking after the things of this earth. You and I have been created to serve. Again, that verse up on the screen. Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they can rule over everything. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock and the wild animals, everything in the created order. We're going to make man in our image so that they can oversee everything that has been created. God made us to imitate him, to rule and subdue the earth for the thriving of society, for the care of our fellow human beings, and so that we may join our Creator God in the work he has put before us. This is the origin story of all of humanity. You and I have been created to partner with God, to join in with the overseeing of the thriving of this world. And you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like we have been made to serve. Not the thriving of society as you and I see it, but as God sees it. You were designed from the beginning to be a person who uses your time, your talents, and your treasures to look up and out and to put the people around you before you. So I want you to think for a second. Those are words from long, long ago. Let's bring ourselves back to 21st century Australia. Here you are. You have a work context. Even if you're retired, right, you still have a work context. I'm sure I hear from some retirees, you retire thinking you're never going to work again, but that's not true. You still work. It just looks different, right? More family stuff, more, you never, while you're here on this earth and there's breath in your lungs, there's always something we're called to do. So you think about your context. There's somewhere you work. There's a family which you belong to. And unfortunately, you didn't have a say in. Like, don't you wish, if you could have round 2, you could go up there and be like, God, sir, look, if I can just have another go at this, I would like to be placed in a different family, please. Is anyone like that? Yeah. Some of you went, nah, this is a good family. Some of you are like, no, I would prefer a different family if possible. So you have a family context. You have friends. Now, those are the people that you got to choose. They're the people who you grew up, you had your family of origin, and you went, these are the people I want to surround myself with. I want to surround myself with these types of people. You have a community that you belong to. You live up here, potentially in the city of Kalamunda. Maybe you live down, like me, in the lowlands. I'm down in Forestfield. Still within the city, but the lowlands. I remember when I first started coming here to LBC, I was having a chat to one of the young guys, and they said the comment basically, oh man, I have to go down to the flats to get that. And I went, oh, how often are you leaving the hills, young man? He was only like 17. Anyway, that was just funny. We have a community that we are surrounded by. And you and I, just by being alive, by the breath in our lungs, by the step-by-step daily living that we do, we have a context that we're sitting in. And what I would love for you to do right now is to just observe internally. Take a little bit of time to think through your workplace or your family or your friendships or your community, and just think of it within the context of being created to be someone who serves those around us. I want you to think about, what would it look like in your workplace, where instead of rocking up tomorrow morning and thinking to yourself, I've just got to survive, what would it look like to go into your work context and be, how can I look out for someone around me? Maybe someone needs something. Maybe there's someone in my workplace who there's a conversation I've been avoiding. Maybe in your workplace you've been overhearing that they're having some troubles at home, or they're going through some things that are a bit heavy. And because, we've got to work, you want to keep your eyes on your work, and there's a need, but you've just been, not selfishly, maybe defensively, but what we've been focusing here, maybe it's an opportunity to go, hang on a second, I was created to look up and to look out, to help oversee the thriving of this world. Maybe there's someone in your workplace who you need to go to tomorrow or this week and say, hey, how you going? Are things okay? Do you want to have a chat? Now, to be clear, you're not there to fix everything, right? But maybe you could just be an ear to listen. Maybe you could just be someone to come alongside and support. Or perhaps in the world of your family, maybe there's some conflict within your family, or maybe there's some things in your family. Maybe the truth is that within your family context, you need to apologize for something. Maybe serving looks like stepping out and saying, I need to say sorry for A, B, or C. Maybe in your family, there's a chance for you to stop looking in the mirror and say, woe is me, and things are going on and whatever. Maybe it's an opportunity to look up and look at the people around you and say, is there something I can do to serve the family I've been given? They're not perfect, but they're the family that I've been given. And as always, an absolute caveat to this is you've always got to be safe. So whenever I teach on this sort of stuff, we talk about engaging in these conversations. These are conversations to be handled wisely. For some of you, because of family trauma and things that have happened in the past, I'm not saying ignore all of those and jump in, because that could make you or the other person unsafe. I just mean if it is wise to do so, and if you know, and the way you know you should be doing it is because you internally have that feeling of, I should be talking to them about this, and you just don't do it. Do you know that tightening of the chest, that feeling in the stomach, that little tap on the shoulder by the Holy Spirit, that little nudge inside that goes, I know I should go up to them and apologize, but it's just hard. I'm talking about that. If those are the things in your family unit, looking up and putting the person before you means looking up and going, I need to step into a conversation. Because you know it's safe to do so, but it's something that's like pulling at you internally. Maybe this week is a week where you can go and have that sort of conversation. Or maybe same with your friendship circle. Maybe you just need to say some truths or apologize. Or maybe you've got one of those friendship circles where something happens and everyone's coping response is basically just to pretend that it didn't happen, and you're getting very tired of that, and you're thinking to yourself, no, I want to say something. Like, we need to deal with this. Like, we all have some circles we run in where it's just like the default mode is just under the carpet. And for some of your family of origin stuff, it's like, perfect, I'm a professional at that. And for others of you, you're like, no, we need to talk about this giant lump that's forming that someone's going to trip over. Maybe serving the person around you is to look up, look out and say, can we deal with some of the stuff that we've been sweeping under the carpet? Can we have that conversation? Or perhaps in your community, maybe there's a neighbor, maybe there's someone you see at the shops. I don't know about you, but anytime I say to God, I want to help somebody, I just keep seeing the same person again and again and again. Have you ever had that experience? And it's almost like, okay, I get it, that's the person. Maybe there's someone in your community where God is saying, hey, if you just look up for a second, God's just inviting you, hey, if you come along and help me oversee this creation, if you help me oversee the thriving, the abundance of it, I've got someone for you to come alongside and to bless and to love and to support. Maybe this week God will show someone in your community that needs you, your presence, your perspective to be a part of their story. You and I were made to rule, to oversee, to subjugate, to partner with God in seeing this world thrive. And what that looks like for many of us, because we're not out practically working the land. Some of us are, not many of us are. But what this looks like in practice is in our workplace, in our families, in our friendships, and in our community, is joining God by looking up, looking around and asking the question, how can I use some of my time, my talents, and my treasures to put these people who are before me. And when you do that, that is what we call an act of service, which ultimately, and Jesus talks a lot about this, is ultimately an act of love. When you put someone first and when you put yourself second, when you leverage your resources for the good of them, for the good of thriving societies, for healthy workplaces, families, friendships, and community, that is an act of love that changes us, but also changes our world. So this week, is it possible for you to live out of the reality that you have been created to serve? I know in the world and in the, especially in the advertising space, it's all about me, what can I get out of it? And traditionally, the church has battled this thinking to go, it's not all about you. It's about something bigger than us. We're a part of something that's bigger than us. So when the world is screaming, you, just look after you first, you won't be happy until you purchase, or you won't be happy until you do, God from the beginning said, hang on a second. It's actually in relationship with me, seeing and overseeing the creation of this world and the thriving and the abundance of it, that you actually find your fit. And that false narrative of it needs to be all about you, it feels good for a while, until the credit card debt piles up, or until the friendships get wrecked, or until life happens. And then you realize, as many of us in the room have come to realize, the true value of a life well lived is when we make it not about ourselves. I've used this example many, many times. When you get to a funeral, it's very rare, I've not been to one before, where they talk about, oh my goodness, they were employed as this level of the company, they had this car, they had this much money, their property portfolio was second to none, they were invested in crypto, they had all these resources and assets, and their yacht, oh, what a yacht. No one rocks up at a funeral and says, look at all the things they have. The stories they get told are when they took time to give their life away. The stories they get told are they were busy at work, but they stopped work to come home and be present with the family. They had wealth, but they didn't use it to go on a cool holiday every few months. They used some of that to actually invest into the well-being of not-for-profits in our community. A life well lived is always measured by how well we give it away to other people. And I think we see that in Genesis chapter 1, because we were created not to just receive and collect. We were created to help oversee and partner with God for the good of our world. So I ask you this morning, will you accept this origin story? Will you see yourself as someone who has been created for more than just yourself? You have been created to look up, to look out, and to love the people around you. I believe that when we do that, we are in sync with God's desire for our world. Your life will be better. Our world will be better, and you'll be a better follower of Jesus if you're able to see serving as just part of the DNA of who you have been created to be. So this week, in your workplace, in your family, in your friendships, or in your community? Is there an opportunity to stop? And before you say, what do I get out of it? Before you get to that, just stop and look up and say, is there someone who needs something that I can come alongside and I can show them the love of God? Let me pray for us. Jesus, I pray that you help us live out of our origin story. I pray that you remind us that we are people who are made by you, who get to love those around us by using our talents, treasures, and time to serve them. Help us as we step into this active role of being a participant in overseeing the thriving and the abundance of this amazing world that we have. We hand everything over to you, our Heavenly Father, in your name and for your glory. Amen.